Let's start with energy. I imagine you breathed a sigh of relief when Democrats dropped some of the most controversial proposals and decided not to do a big comprehensive energy bill. Now they have this stripped down version supposed to crack down on the oil companies. What's your objection?
Well, my objection is, as I said yesterday, they're treating this like an unwanted relative. It's a very serious subject. We've been ready to debate it for a year. We've got our own proposals on nuclear power, electric cars, energy research and development, clean air. But the majority leader is bringing up a 400-page bill at the last minute, no amendments, no time to debate, pretending like we're actually doing something on clean energy when, in fact, there's no intention that we do it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. That may be the case, but since we don't like pretending, I mean, do you really think Republicans want to make a deal a few months before the elections on energy? I mean, let's be real about it.
We've been ready for a year to debate clean energy. A clean energy bill is a serious subject. It takes several weeks to deal with. That's what happened in 2005, 2007. We'd start with the oil spill. Then we'd authorize the building of 100 nuclear plants. Then we agree on electric cars. We're ready to double energy research and development, and a lot of us are on a clean air bill. Now, there are a series of steps we've been ready to debate for a long time, yet this is coming up with about 1 or 2 days to consider, no amendments, no time to debate. It's a lot like the health care bill that was brought up at the last minute around Christmas.
Whoa, really? Were you under the impression the health care bill was debated for more than a year? I remember a whole summer in the Senate Finance Committee of bipartisan negotiations going on that one.
There was a lot of talk, but if you'll remember, during the biggest snowstorm in Washington's history, Senator Reid introduced the health care bill over the weekend before Christmas. We hadn't even read it before. We voted on it in the middle of the night, and it had to be passed in 2 or 3 days. And what was the result? An unpleasant surprise every other day for the rest of this year. So we don't want to take a 400-page clean energy bill that deserves serious consideration and cram it into a day or two without any amendments, without any debate. That's not the way to do a serious piece of legislation.
Senator, let's turn to immigration. I'm sure you've been following the developments in Arizona. As you know, the federal government had made an argument essentially on a pretty practical level, just saying, look, if Arizona rounds up all of these folks and turns them over to us, it will burden our resources. Would you be willing to spend more money on enforcement in order to let an Arizona law like the one that was passed go into effect? In other words, do you think that would be money well spent so that, these immigration checks could be done?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, the one thing that the court decision yesterday reminded us of is that it is the federal government's job to enforce the law. The president is the commander-in-chief. He ought to be doing that. Instead of suing Arizona, he ought to be working with the governor to enforce the law. And if he needs more money and more help, Congress should give it to him. And Republicans, I think, as well as Democrats, would be ready to do that.
Let's move on to the economy. As you know, there's potentially a debate coming over whether or not to extend the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest of Americans. The White House, most Democrats think those should be repealed. Republicans have argued that that will hurt growth, imperil this fragile recovery. My question to you is, as somebody who cares about the deficit and in fact voted against the extension of unemployment benefits on that basis because concerns it wasn't paid for, do you have a similar concern that extending the Bush tax cuts without paying for them is also a bad idea?
The problem with the taxes is that raising taxes in the middle of a recession or bad economic times is a bad idea because it makes it harder to create jobs. That's what Republicans believe, and a growing number of Democrats are saying that. Senator Conrad, Senator Bayh, others. Senator Conrad's chairman of the Budget Committee. He's as concerned about the deficit as anyone is. But raising taxes in the middle of a recession, for example, would raise taxes on 1/2 the small business income and take away from small businesses the money they'd use to create jobs. We shouldn't be doing it.
Isn't that this court's kind of the same argument, though? I mean, because I have to say, Democrats were saying a couple weeks ago, well, we're worried about the deficit too, but unemployment spending is important, so it's okay to deficit spend in the short term, so to not threaten the fragile recovery. Sounds like you're making a very similar argument in a different context, saying it's okay to delay tax hikes because we don't want to imperil the recovery. I mean, isn't that basically the same argument?
Well, no, it's not exactly the same because they were talking about spending new money that would add to the debt. We're not talking about cutting taxes here. We're talking about whether or not to raise taxes in the middle of bad economic times. And almost everybody that I know thinks doing that would make it harder to create jobs. And almost everybody I know thinks creating jobs is the single most important thing we ought to be working on today.
All right, Senator Lamar Alexander, third-ranking Republican in the Senate. It's great to have you today on a variety of topics. Appreciate it. Okay, coming up, we're going to reveal the White House soup of the day, one a senior administration official says belongs in the White House.